Do I need this too? You want me to use two? Okay. Vielen Dank. Das war sehr schön. It's very generous. I'm so delighted to be here. I am going to talk about maybe a second or even a third order solution that I learned about. And I also learned that I regularly dance between an idealist and an integrator. And I think that's also because I have the great privilege of working principally in an academic context, but also in a professional practice. And so for me, this is also an incredible learning opportunity. I want to address the biggest stakeholder in this conversation. We might think it's us, because we tend to think that we are the center of everything, but actually, it is the planet that sustains us. You've all heard the expression that there is no planet B. Well, that's the perspective on sustainability I would like to offer you in design education, that there's nowhere else for us to go. And even with our collective brilliance in design, we are here. And we are working with the biggest stakeholder of all, nature, the planet that supports us and all the living beings on it, of which we are just one species. We're very important, of course. So with that in mind, let's think about a second and third order solution that might not appear on its surface to have anything to do with the products you design or the services you design or the people with whom you work, who are, of course, many times in need and vulnerable if you're an idealist and you're a service provider. But there's something else that's important, and that's what this short talk and provocation was about. Co-creating and relating to the rest of the world through the act of design. And I want to start by saying, and I did so yesterday, exactly that nature, the wildlife, the plants, the animals, the beings that we don't see are actually big stakeholders because they in turn protect us. And on a planet where we are growing very quickly, particularly in our cities, our connections to nature are disappearing very quickly, and that makes it even harder for us to relate. So we, of course, as humans, have developed this wonderful capacity to be connected all across the planet in multiple ways, but this creates real problems for the other creatures among us. And I'm using some big-bodied examples that are easy to see here. So these kinds of images in our cities are becoming more common, where we are seeing the results of the ways in which we've cut up the planetary surface into little bits, mostly suitable for us. And we think this is an anomaly or something strange. And yet we have a hard time relating to these images of strange and weird juxtapositions. But they are becoming more increasingly common. And at the same time, ironically, we are becoming more distant from understanding our relationships with other beings. And yet the United Nations recognizes in the context of the Sustainable Development Goals and climate change that nature, more specifically called biodiversity, the abundance and distribution and diversity of life itself, biodiversity is the very best natural, pre-existing defense we have against climate change. And so that means that in the context of the Sustainable Development Goals that you might be working, nature, life on land, life below water, life itself is a stakeholder, and that's connected to all of the other Sustainable Development Goals. It's also connected to the services that nature provides for free to us. I know that the instrumentalists and the traditionalists have ways of evaluating the services, just like they did the value of human life against the redesign of a Ford Pinto gas tank. So we have conversations about this regularly, don't we? Those services, though, are part of the newest set of global frameworks around the protection of nature. The Global Biodiversity Framework for 2030 says we have to protect 30% of life on land and life below water to recover the services that nature provides for us. So that's one way to think about sustainability. In my lab, let me share some examples of how we do this, which I hope inspire you, and I hope in the workshop that you did, you will inspire me to think about this differently. We work across three pillars: connecting landscapes for the safe movement of people and wildlife, the design of green and blue infrastructures that are alive and worth investing in and that actually require design, and of course the concept of resilience that brings this together in the context of sustainability. But in layperson's terms, we connect people to nature in cities. That's what we do. There are more cities than ever, there are more people than ever living in cities, and we need connections to nature for our own health and wellness. So how do we do that? A number of publications that I do work specifically with designers to help inform that practice and in turn study it. More importantly for me still, there is a moral and ethical perspective based on how and where I live. Binagami is an indigenous Anishinaabe term that governs the territories and lands where I work and live, and this essentially means a shared responsibility. And that's what I offer to you. As citizens of the planet, we all have a shared responsibility to nature, to land, to life itself. And this governs, is overseeing the work that we do. Essentially, we have a research-based practice, and we call it a praxis, the links between theory that we develop and the research empirical data that we study, and that allows us to scale up and across landscapes, specifically designed solutions to build better relations with land and life. So just a quick tour of some of the things we do. Hard maybe to connect to product design, but I'll show you the results of this in some of the design solutions. We do field work. We ask very basic questions about how and where wildlife move. Many different species. We've studied everything from birds to bats, and understanding how they move across landscapes. In this case, bird migration. We want to understand bird migration and movement so that we can understand how our built form, our architecture, and our city planning might engage with and support our shared responsibility to the birds around us. These can range from owls to bluebirds to songbirds to shorebirds, and we ask questions in design with those data. We use those data to say, well, how can we design buildings and landscapes that are bird safe? Birds can't see glass. They don't recognize glass as an object. They see it as transparent reflection of the sky. And when they migrate both from Africa through Europe or from South America to North America, twice a year we lose literally billions of birds. 1/3 of our songbirds have disappeared since 1970. 30%, approaching 40%, they're gone. So what is life without birdsong? What's the price of that? That's part of the conversation. These powerful images of loss can be recovered through beautiful design, through new ways of thinking about glass and the relationship to the street if you're an architect. So we've developed guidelines for bird-safe cities. We've done this for the city of Toronto, which is the first city in North America to make these regulatory. Europe has plenty of examples. We're building on these together to create new and innovative ways to develop materials that are bird-safe and architecture itself, as well as city planning strategies that provide safe movement for birds. Another example, large-bodied animals are easier to understand in a talk like this, so very quickly, we ask questions about how and where wildlife movements are affected by land use change. What does this do for creatures that have very large ranges across country borders, in and out of our cities, across parks? We've studied cheetahs together with the Cape Leopard Trust and Thanbona Wildlife Reserve, participating in their research. We collar and move animals. Our lab has a great number of participants and collaborators. This is not necessarily our work, but work in which we participate, so that we understand how to gather and use these data to inform design solutions that protect the movements of wildlife. Whether that's even you as a citizen or resident can provide data to eBird, Merlin, iNaturalist. These are multiple crowdsourced platforms now that are really well and truly available for designers to access. We use this work to say, well, how can we design landscape-based infrastructures that allow connected, safe passage, not just for wildlife, but also for people? Can we get multiple benefits for our own wellness and well-being through infrastructure design that does more than one thing? That's generally good design, to serve multiple clients. And we've done this together with scientists who provide excellent data. We research how and where wildlife move, and we've discovered some interesting things. For example, that wildlife bridges, specifically for large-bodied mammals that connect two sides of a roadway and prevent car crashes and the loss of human life, also result in learning for wildlife. They teach their young. This is not an accident that they cross. They know, they learn, and they understand how and where to move. And these studies allow us, in turn, to improve those designs together with very creative architects, road engineers, traffic engineers, structural engineers, landscape architects, botanists, all engaged in making these infrastructures work for us. They are living laboratories. They're not just pieces of concrete and steel and landscape, but they actually help solve major societal problems. So we're working together with communities across North America right now, recognizing that the number of roads on the planetary surface will increase upwards of 60% by 2050. That's a lot of roadway. So let's redesign the road. Let's make them look different. Let's help prevent this kind of roadside normality and change the way we relate to beings on the road. Doesn't mean we have to stop using transportation, but means that our transportation and our mobility will be different. Thinking differently here about connectivity. Not all road bridges look like this. This is one in Banff National Park. But you can see that these are images of reconnecting a landscape, not just a tunnel. When you look at this, do you see a tunnel, a bridge, or a new way of moving? For this guy, it's a new way of moving that's essential. In Hollywood, there are cougars now in Griffith Park. We welcome wildlife into our cities in strange and unusual ways, but we can also provide connectivity for beasts that need 5,000 square kilometers of territory, not just a tiny park where there's never a mate to be found. This bridge is the world's largest wildlife crossing. I shared an example of this project on which we're providing technical advice. Most importantly in this project was landscape design, together with a recognition that the landscape on either side was very important to not only to connect, but to redesign for people for the safe movement across the largest highway in California, in fact, the busiest highway in North America. Together, we're working with a group of partners to do this, who also helped to engage in our design studio. And very quickly, I'll just offer some inspiring images from students who, working together with the Wildlife Crossing Fund and some of our research partners, were able to rethink how movement happens in a busy state like California, not just for people, but through the lenses of other beings. So the workshop stimulus that I left you with yesterday was to ask you to think about what is it like to conceive of the world in which you have to navigate underwater, or perhaps in a tunnel. If your world is digging under the city fabric, what does that mean for design? What if you had to think like a wolf, where you're avoiding being recognized, but having to cross a road and to build new territory? Or what if you're a tiny golden newt? How does that affect your life when there's no water left, or when the water in the ponds are drying up? What can we do about that? Or what about the Mojave tarantula? What is it like to see the world through the 8 lenses of a spider? Or a desert tortoise in a solar field? Or a fish trying to get back to the ocean? Or the mule deer under a busy California roadway? Thinking about these structures through the lenses of other beings gives us new inspiration for design. It fundamentally changes our perspective. And that's what I wanted to leave you with, a way of thinking about sustainability with nature as the biggest stakeholder, and an opportunity to redesign, to rethink, and to reconnect in a way that we call more than human design. Think about human-centric design as a big shift in our thinking. The next shift in thinking for second-order solutions, maybe third-order solutions, is to design with a more than human approach, and to think about ourselves in concert with the natural world that actually sustains us, for us and for all our relations. Let's get connected. Thank you very much.